Orioles baseball as they head to Fenway Park with playoffs and pennant race and 7 games left with the Red Sox, and they're coming home for some home cooking this weekend. Luke Jones will be on the scene for all things Orioles baseball all week long, out on our Twitter and our Facebook. Any breaking news on the tech service, of course, brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. But for here and now, it's all purple. Luke, I'm very confused. I'm wearing my buckled up shirt. I got my Ravens cap going. It's a true pennant race, two-sport hustle going on right now, and it's delicious in that sort of way that we've really never had it here like this, have we? Where they're both really this relevant at this time where every Oriole game really matters.
Yeah, well, we've had it a couple times the last few years, but, it's still something that feels relatively new. There's no doubt about that. And, good to see, with the Orioles taking care of business in Detroit, but, I think many fans focused on what was happening downtown at the stadium, Ravens kicking off the season. And, look, this was a grinded-out kind of a win. It wasn't anything that's going to have anyone shooting the Ravens up their power rankings or anything like that. But this is the kind of game that the Ravens found ways to lose over and over a year ago. Whether it was one missed assignment, a critical penalty in the second half. The Ravens had some penalties in the first half, but they cleaned that up in the second half. The thing that, and I wrote about this at WNST.net, the Ravens just played faster than the Bills did. And that's not to say that it was a dominating, blow the door off kind of blowout performance, but they looked faster on defense. They did a terrific job beginning and ending of this game. First and fourth quarters, the Ravens held Buffalo to 12 yards of offense combined. That's just, that's shades of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and the Ravens defense of yesteryear.
Yeah, that's where you're trying to put a donut up every single week, and that's the barometer. It's 0. Anything more than 0 is unacceptable. I could take that. And, if that's a direction they're building in, it was a pretty good effort on Sunday. It really was defensively.
Yeah, and clearly you're not going to expect to only give up 160 total yards and 1 touchdown. And let's face it, they were an Albert McClellan sack of Tyrod Taylor away from potentially pitching a shutout on Sunday. But it was just good to see the defense play, and I'll borrow a phrase from Terrell Suggs that he's used over the years. They played like their hair was on fire. They did, especially in that first quarter. And, they had some stretches where maybe they didn't get after Taylor as much as they would have liked, and, they gave up a few runs here or there. Probably need to do a little better job holding the edge on some of those off-tackle plays, but overall, there wasn't a whole lot, and they certainly made plays, not necessarily in terms of creating turnovers, but they made stops. And, you look at the final stats, when you hold a team to 160 yards, which was the fewest allowed by a Ravens defense since they played the Jets back in 2011, another Rex Ryan team. So maybe they just have Rex's number at this point. But you just see that kind of performance and the way they just played with aggressiveness and they played with confidence and they played with speed. That was really good to see that. And let's face it, save for the Mike Wallace and Brashad Perriman long bombs that they caught, and clearly the Wallace bomb longer than the 35-yard reception to Perriman, the offense didn't do a ton, and certainly in the second half, they did very, very little. I think they only had, it was 83 yards of offense after halftime. So
they didn't touch the ball much in the third quarter, honestly.
Yeah, they needed their defense to play at that kind of level, and they absolutely did. So it was very encouraging to see that. Again, it's the Bills. I don't think the Bills are going to be particularly good this year, but for a Ravens team coming off a 5-11 season, whether you want to call it a grinded out, uneven, unimpressive, ugly win, any of the adjectives you want to use, that's the kind of game that they really struggled to win last year. And to get the first one, even if there are certainly some things to work on both sides of the ball, you'll take it and you'll be happy with it. And on to Cleveland, I guess, is what John Harbaugh would say.
Luke, you've been out on the backfields for virtually every practice over the last 6 weeks as the season got ready. You've been doing double duty with the Orioles as well. But, you've watched this offense and you've watched third and fourth team players out there at various points in the heat. Thoughts about Flacco with this receiving core? And I know I tweeted some superlatives in the second quarter when they were sprinkling the ball around, and it felt like, well, Wallace is going to get deep, and Pitt is back in there. My God, he looks healthy. Perryman, is going over the shoulder and making, acrobat. But Steve Smith's in the slot. That's going to be a tough matchup. Kamar Aiken's still here. He's pretty good last year. You start to feel like, well, he's got some weapons here. And I know you alluded to the fact that maybe there were too many guys and we don't know who the number one is. But the thing for me is seeing Flacco back there, when he's coming back from a massive injury and he somehow isn't even a question mark in week one, that's pretty cool. Seeing Forsett run around a little bit and have West, and they look very similar in body style, maybe the slash a little bit. That's interesting to me. But I haven't seen him out there throwing passes to Pitta in a month. Obviously, Perryman just got cleared and was only been around for 5 minutes. And Steve Smith has only been on the back fields, really hasn't been on the real field. I don't know how they couldn't have had some level of chaos running around, because they haven't all been running around out there together. They are not a well-oiled unit. They're a bunch of really good players with pedigree, and maybe they know the offense and the play, but it really did feel like a fire drill at various points where Flacco was setting guys up, and obviously guys stopped short on routes, almost cost Flacco a really hideous pick at one point.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, that felt like that was the kind of play that went the other way last year.
Sure.
So maybe that's a sign of better fortune in 2016. But you're right. I mean, you looked at how this passing game specifically, some of the names you mentioned, guys that just weren't on the field a whole lot this summer, and Joe Flacco only played in the third preseason game. So even some of the guys that were on the field, he only got a limited amount of live game reps, and that's why anyone who was saying they wouldn't have even played Flacco in the third preseason game, that's why I disagreed. You needed to get some live game reps.
By the way, all three of those guys, Pitta, Perryman, and Smith, were not on the field for that effort, right? So
Right. So, I mean, it's absolutely, that's a challenge there. I'll say this. I thought the passing game looked really, really good in the first half. I mean, look at Flacco's first half stats. 13 of 19, 188 yards and a touchdown. I mean, you'll take that. I mean, that's a quarterback rating, I believe, right around 118, I think it was.
I don't care who you're throwing the ball to. Somebody's catching it right there, right?
Yeah. So you saw, and I'm not saying they were a complete passing game there, but you saw the potential there, and certainly you saw the speed with the touchdown to Wallace, the 35-yard completion to Perriman. Those are the two plays I think the Ravens offense really they're able to hang their hats on for week one. But then in the second half, it was much more disjointed. I thought Flacco looked more uncomfortable in the pocket. One area where I won't excuse the offensive line has to play better, and that's a group that typically was on the field. They were missing John Urschel for a large portion of the summer, and he was inactive on Sunday. We saw Alex Lewis start at left guard. I thought Stanley and Lewis held up reasonably well as rookies. I don't think that was necessarily even the major problem. They really had their issues with Jeremy Zuda, and even Marshall Yanda committed a couple penalties. And we're talking about the best guard in the NFL over the last few years. So the offensive line, a lot of the problems really stem there. I mean, they didn't protect Flacco particularly well. They had some pre-snap penalties in the first half that really cost them some chances to hang some more points on the board. And even the running game, they didn't have a terrific running game. It was kind of just a so-so performance. I think they finished averaging 3 yards per carry.
But it didn't fail. It was not an abject failure, even though on short yardage, as you've pointed out, they talk about wanting to be fat and stout, and they throw the football. It doesn't make any sense.
Or that they ran that toss-out play, which they finally hit on one of those late in the game. But but overall, as far as the passing game goes, if you had told me this is what it was going into the week, I would have taken that, and I would have said, yeah, they're probably going to have some miscommunications, and they're probably going to have some issues. And I even thought, because Mark Trestman said this on Thursday going into week one, that they would kind of use a committee, a group kind of effort as far as all these different receivers, all these different tight ends, 2 different running backs, each with at least 10 carries. And I thought that, that there might be some growing pains there. As much as you like seeing that many receivers and tight ends catch passes, I'm not sure that's always what's best for the flow of your offense. And we'll see how it's going to evolve. As you said, I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of time for all these guys to be together at once. So, you have to
the ones that aren't on the field now are like Crockett, Gilmore, and Max Williams. It's amazing. Not only that Pitt is back and catching footballs, which I think at any point, bro, you and I would have wagered against. This just the fact that he's out there, but that he's out there and has earned the job as the best tight end and turns heads of, Mark Trestman saying, I like him. And all of a sudden, there's that comfort level with Flacco where he catches 3 balls. I mean, he might wind up leading the team in receptions this month before it's all over with, based on what I saw on Sunday. And that's a pretty bright thing to be looking at, a throwback Dennis Pitta in this lineup again.
Yeah, and think back to the 27-yard reception when they were at midfield. This was an offense that had done virtually nothing. I think they had only had a couple first downs that weren't via penalty on the other side until Flacco hits that 27-yarder and puts them in field goal range, and they were able to make it still a one-score game, but you knew that Buffalo would have to score a touchdown, and the way the Ravens defense had played to that point, you felt pretty good about their chances under that scenario. But it was definitely a kind of a tale of two halves for the passing game. They hit on the verticals. I know John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco both talked about the fact that Buffalo was in cover 0 quite a bit, where they just played straight man coverage and felt that they didn't do a good enough job taking advantage of that by going vertical a little bit more. Now, I think the pass protection probably played into that as well. But, and I'm not saying that either of them were implying this, but maybe a veiled message to Mark Trestman to, hey, you have Mike Wallace, you have Brashad Perriman. I know you want to get everyone involved, but speed kills. And that's something that the Ravens just did not have the ability to do in 2015. Hadn't had the ability to do that since Torrey Smith left via free agency. So, maybe that was a very subtle message to say, hey, we need to be aggressive in those spots, because think about it. They really didn't take any other deep shots other than those 2 plays, really. And they had success with both of those. So this is a work in progress. I figured it would be. I think most fans figured it would be. It's hard to just have guys coming off injury to just line up after they miss a large portion of the summer. As much as we dismiss preseason and what it all means, guys still need to get work in. And when
and as much as you get pissed, too, when you're there and guys are jumping and moving around and you're like, hey, do you guys practice together? Well, no, they didn't. I guess that would be the point on Sunday, right?
Sure. And the fact that, the fact that the offense did really struggle as much as it did for large stretches of the game, and they were able to come up with a win, you can kind of look at that two ways. One, they're bound to be better as they get more comfortable with one another. As Joe Flacco, now, the narrative at this point, he was asked questions about his knee after the game. I'm guessing we're not going to hear a whole lot about that moving forward unless there's a reason, unless people see him not moving as well. Joe's joked about it. He's not a guy who's ever been like Michael Vick or even a Ben Roethlisberger moving around the pocket quite that often. So, you'd like to see him maybe, there were a couple chances maybe for him to move around a little bit, and he didn't, held on to the ball a little bit too long. But, these are things that, any team is going to have challenges with new pieces and getting used to new guys, but especially when you have some guys coming back from injury, it's going to take some time. So you can look at it as half glass full or half glass empty, half empty. I think, this was a case where you take more of the positives. I think, wasn't, as I said, wasn't a dynamic performance from the offense, but I still like seeing that speed that Mike Wallace and Perriman showed. That's what this team, it was just such an eyesore last year that they had no one who could do that. They brought in Chris Gibbons from St. Louis, and he couldn't do anything there to really move the meter. So it was nice to see that. And those 2 plays were the difference in the game. Think about it. Those 2 plays, the touchdown clearly to Wallace, but the Perriman reception was the big play on them getting their first points on the field goal. So you get more of that, and then you get your timing, get in sync a little bit more as an offense. Hopefully get the running game going a little more consistently. And the pass protection has to be better. That's the no-brainer prerequisite for any of this to really work. But you clean up some of those things. as you move forward here, and you might have the makings of a pretty darn good offense.
Well, you want Joe to get hit, right? I mean, you just sort of feel it out. You just don't want him to get hit that much. And
Yeah.
that would be my concern, that I don't know what the number is going to be at the end. You'll go to Pro Football Focus or whatever, how many times he got dusted up. But it felt like about a dozen times he got pushed around. He got sacked 4 times. But it felt like he was under duress and dirt in the ball. I mean, there were times where, it looked like it could have been grounding at various points that he was running so much. I want to see that improve in a big way.
Yeah, that has to. And that's what I said. I mean, the receivers, all the different skill position players. I get that as far as some of the timing and limited practice time this summer. But that's what I said about this offensive line. For the most part, I mean, Urschel was the one guy who missed time, and he wasn't active on Sunday. So
Alex Lewis did an okay job. I think Ronnie Stanley did too. I mean, it's about 2 guys that had never played in an NFL game, right?
Yeah, I think it was more a collective group, across the board, just not playing the way they wanted to. I mean, the pre-snap penalties in the first half. Zuda had the issues. I mean, there were some cadence issues, but
even Yonda struggled. I mean, you don't expect to see that.
Looking at the official game book, I mean, it had Buffalo as having 9 quarterback hits. I mean, that's too many, especially for your quarterback coming off of an ACL injury. So, I mean, that's the thing that concerned me. That's the thing that clearly has to be better. I mean, the other stuff I expect to come, but, as I said, as far as them wanting to go vertical a little bit more, there may have been some opportunities for them to do that had they gotten a little bit better pass protection. So that's the one area where I say that no excuse, that has to be better. The other stuff I think will come with some more time. Even the running backs, I still think, I said this to you before the season started, and I still feel that way. I think Kenneth Dixon, if healthy, and clearly we think it's going to be a couple more weeks for him, I think he can be their best running back. I think he can certainly be their most explosive game changer in terms of speed at that position. So I think there's plenty of upside for the passing game and for the running game, for that matter. But it begins and ends with the offensive line. We can talk about Joe Flacco and everyone else that's catching passes from Flacco or carrying the ball. But if you don't have good offensive line play, the rest of that stuff, quite frankly, doesn't matter nearly as much. So that was the one area from the offense where I really can't give them too much of a pass. They have to be better as an offensive line.
Well, you know of my man crush on Justin Forsett, and part of that is rekindled on a day like Sunday, where he really does see the game differently than most of the other backs that I even see in the league. I mean, I'm sitting in the upper deck. He really has a sense about holes. Now, to your point, the offensive line has to create said holes, and if they do, he can hit them. He might not be a guy that is going to run 64 yards for a touchdown, but I certainly see him having many slashing 8 to 15-yard runs in this offense if given the opportunity, and they don't want to give him the ball 28 times. It's fine. Let West be the guy who carries it 19 times next week, but give Forsett the ball 12 times, and I bet you he might have 70 yards.
Yeah, and I don't really, the way it's constructed now, and like I said, I think Dixon's the one who gives them the most upside, but I think Forsett and West can be productive and have to question how Buck Allen's going to fit into this. I mean, he was inactive on Sunday, so you really have to wonder what his roster status is at this point once Dixon gets back and if he's healthy. So we'll see how he potentially works in as we move forward, but I think Forsett and West can be productive enough. I don't think it's going to be dynamic, but I think it can do the job. But another point I'll go back to, Mark Trestman at times, I think the run can be lost a little bit. And you look at the final balance, 28 carries compared to 34 passing attempts for Flacco, certainly dropped back a few other times as well, and was sacked 4 times. But
ran the ball 4 times. Did those 9 pushes of Flacco, that doesn't include the 4 runs for -3 yards, right? So there's 13 times he probably was hit then, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely hit. But, I still think Mark Trestman, and I said this last year, as much as they were behind last year, so I won't completely just blindly look at the run-pass ratio, because when you're behind as much as the Ravens were in 2015, you are going to throw more. But I still think there are times where he loses the run a little bit. And where there's some times where they could have committed to it a little bit more on Sunday, maybe. But that's something that is going to be a work in progress. And when you have a running back by committee, that the challenge is going to be getting guys into a rhythm. And Forsett averaged 4.1 yards per carry. You'll take it. It's not fantastic, but you'll certainly take that. West got some tough yardage when need be, but not a whole lot there for him. So that's something that will be a work in progress. But this offense, I think the positive here is there is some strength in numbers, and it's just going to be what's going to fit best, and a lot of this is going to depend on matchup. I think that's going to be abundantly clear as we go on. I mean, I think Buffalo was a team that was going to try to get after Flacco as much as they could and try to exploit that rookie left side of the offensive line, and they did some things to confuse the Ravens up front. But overall, I still think there was enough positive there to have some optimism moving forward.
Well, one of the reasons to have optimism is Cleveland in the headlights, Jacksonville the week after that, Oakland, and I know Oakland came back late. Jacksonville struggled, but hung in there with a very good, or what we perceived to be a very good Green Bay team as well. Cleveland, meanwhile, went to Philadelphia and got pretty thoroughly beaten by a kid that wasn't the quarterback of the team a week ago, and oh, by the way, is a rookie from North Dakota State. Really does not bode well for Cleveland. I know I had a Cleveland reporter on this week, Mark Schwab, who said it was very hard to figure out one game Cleveland would win, and then I saw that people were tweeting about it at the end of the week too, like what game could Cleveland win? If you can't hold your own in Philadelphia, I would like to think that this time next week we're talking about a 2-0 Raven team, Luke.
You would certainly hope so. I mean, that is a Browns team that has a ton of young players. I will say this. I mean, their offense. I mean, it wasn't productive on Sunday, that's for sure. But they have some receivers that they want to try to go vertical with, and RG3. We'll see how the shoulder issue. I know he said he'll be fine to play against the Ravens, but he's someone who, if he gets time, does have a decent deep ball. So that's something you just have to be aware of. But that's certainly a team that, if you have any designs of making noise in the AFC this year, if you have any designs of trying to win this AFC North, and we saw Cincinnati certainly get a big win against the Jets on the road on Sunday, but you got to go to Cleveland and win. And the Ravens were able to get the win last year because of the Will Hill play, and they were able to get that crazy Monday night win. But that's a team that is clearly rebuilding big time, even more extreme than they've been at various points over the last 15 years. So you got to take care of business. And we talked about this. I mean, this Ravens schedule early on sets up to get off to a fast start. And as much as they're dealing with the challenges of maybe getting their offense in sync with so many pieces coming back from injuries and new pieces, and the defense revamp played really, really well against the Bills on Sunday, but they were without Elvis Dumervil. So that's still a group that will evolve and will certainly have some challenges. And playing on the road is a different animal than playing at M&T Bank Stadium, as the Ravens have proven over the years. How many times have we seen them play great defensively at home and struggle a little bit more on the road? So that's as far as road games go, it doesn't get much better than going to Cleveland as far as eyes on getting a win.
Well, this version of Cleveland right now, I mean, dude, we've been to Cleveland a lot where they've really stunk. This is the worst of the whole pack of Browns teams. I mean, I'm going back to your Jeff Garcias and your Dilfers and name anybody else that they took that used to be a Redskin. They had a bunch. Jason Campbell. They've had them all, right? This group here collectively, PU, man.
Probably. I mean, remember that. As far as worst Browns teams, that's actually a pretty high standard. I mean, if you're going to be the absolute worst, because they've had some dreadful teams. I mean, they're young. They had, I want to say, I thought I saw something that they had upwards of more than a dozen rookies on their active, their 46-man active game day roster in Week 1. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's a team that is clearly rebuilding, completely tore down the previous regime, and they're going to need time. But at the same time, but let's face it, the Ravens did not play well on the road last year. So let's see them go out and handle a team that they should beat on the road. Following week at Jacksonville, I think that's an improved Jaguars team. Certainly a team that lost at home against Green Bay, but Packers one of the better teams in the league, and they got some talented players. But that's a Cleveland team that again, if you want to be taken seriously as a playoff contender coming off of a 5-11 season, you got to go to Cleveland and win. And let's also keep in mind the Ravens, even some of their best years here in the John Harbaugh era, they've gone to Cleveland a couple times and they've had tighter than expected games. So I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, this is a Browns team
this
that
better not be one of them.
yeah. This is get a win no matter how. Don't apologize for a close win on the road. But this is a team that they should handle because it's clear that this Browns team is not built for 2016. Probably not built for 2017 as they try to collect draft picks and go as young as they possibly can.
Luke Jones will be on the scene all week in Owings Mills and doing double duty beginning the weekend as the Orioles round the turn in this pennant race. We'll be monitoring all things at Fenway Park all week long as well on our Twitter and social media, as well as out at WNST.net. I've got a blog coming on the Orioles' attendance woes, and of course, they return Thursday night home against the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll see how it turns out. Red Sox in next week as well. And you can find Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke on Twitter. I am Nestor Aparicio on Twitter. Together we are at WNST, and you can find us out on LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel, streaming live as well. Anything you missed here, you can find in the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. We're one download away. You can podcast listen when you want, where you want, how you want. No static at all, just like Steely Dan. It's the Buy a Toyota audio vault. The morning newspaper reaches your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Don't forget, we will be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry next week with Eric Weddle. I will have full details about next Tuesday night coming up, especially if you're up in Harford County, bringing Eric Weddle and the Beard out for a great, great cause. Gotten to know Eric a little bit here in the early going. We have some mutual friends out in San Diego. Great player, making an impact, and we'll be making an impact in our community next Tuesday by helping us save some more lives on the Bone Marrow Registry. Last but never least, if there's any breaking news at all, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here getting ready for Oriole baseball on Thursday, homecoming, as well as the Jets and the Bills playing Thursday night football. I am Nasty at WNST.net. Anywhere you want to find me, I'm very, very available individual. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.